So when 9/11 happened, we were there and we had an immigration status that was fine. But when 9/11 happened, they like put a lot of things on pause very abruptly. George W. Bush had just been the governor of Texas. It was just some other conservative guy, Rick Perry, I believe. When 9/11 happened, they said that, okay, if you're under this immigration class, they can't deport you because you haven't done anything wrong, but they won't let you renew your driver's license, work permit, or study permit.
Why?
Because you're Muslim. You're from one of these 14 Muslim countries, and 9/11 has just happened, so they want to do a background check on you, which takes 8 years to do. And during those 8 years, you can't renew your work permit, study permit, or driver's license.
Technically, for 8 years, you cannot do anything.
They're trying to get rid of you without deporting you. Legally, they can't deport you, but they can make things very difficult for you, so you leave.
You cannot survive. I'm really excited to share this episode with you guys because the guest we have today is a dreamer and who is also actively pursuing his dream. He's a son, he's a brother, he's a husband, he's a father, and he's also a stand-up comedian. So without further delay, let's hear from the one and only Syed Raza. Welcome to the Avilash podcast, Syed brother. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Love to have you, brother, here. You have a very positive vibe, brother. So, at the very beginning, I just want to say that very first time when I see you, you have this positive aura. I don't know if you remember the first time we met.
I think I do.
Exactly. So you have that positive vibe. So I was working over there, and you was coming from one of your stand-up show.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, hey, that was what I was doing. I was like, go, no way.
Yeah.
So that was my whole first impression regarding you. Tell us something about that.
So if you ever catch me late at night, that is as happy as I can be and as tired as I can be. So you're like drunk on tiredness. So whatever you're feeling, so like every time I saw you, you were like very like, hey. And I was just like, I'm happy to see this guy. So yeah, those are the best times to catch me is after I'm done stand-up and I'm just like dead tired, just drove in from Toronto over an hour. And then, yeah, it was good to have those interactions. And that's why I was in a good mood, frankly.
Amazing. You know what? I have to tell you this. For this podcast, you're my true inspiration.
Oh, no, man, come on.
Yeah. Let me tell you why I'm saying that.
Sure.
Because I do remember the very first day when we met and you mentioned that you are doing stand-up comedy and you're coming from your show. So at that point, I really think about myself because for this particular podcast, I was planning it for a while. And for me, every time I think like, oh, time is not right for me, right? Then I saw you and I believe we went a little deeper into the conversation. And in that point, you mentioned time is never right. You have to start at any given point what you feel like that you can do, or at least try,
Yeah.
So that is the reason I'm saying you're my true inspiration.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate you saying that. Honestly, like, consider that's like really nice to hear. You know what? I think inspiration strikes you in different ways. I watched this movie called Fight Club, and there was this part where the guy says, when you've lost everything, you're free to do anything. And like every now and then I feel myself at like the most bummed out. If something really kind of strikes me as the right thing to do, like this is what your heart wants you, I take it as like a calling. And that's how I got into it in terms of wanting to do stand-up. And it wasn't until like one of my good friends was just like, you should do stand-up. He just happened to say this to me. And I was like, you know what, I should do stand-up. Like I've been thinking about it forever. The moment he said this to me I recently got married. It was very hectic and stressful. Just moved to Toronto away from all my friends and family. Just started a new job, was not going very well. And when he said this to me, I was like, dude, it's never going to be the right time to do stupid stand-up comedy. Like it's not something that you're like, I can tell this is the right time to tell stranger jokes. But yeah, I think these things are like the universe tells you, it's always whispering to you. And then somebody says something to you. And you're like, you know what, damn it, I'm going to go do the podcast, do stand up, whatever, become an animal expert, whatever people's heart desires. But yeah, I feel like they're already in us. It's like it's an inception moment. Like the idea is definitely planted there. It just takes like one thing happening. You see the right billboard on a bus going by.
And it's just kicking.
Yeah, or like I need some teeth white or whatever it says, you know?
Interesting. So tell us something about yourself.
I grew up in Houston. I grew up in Pakistan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I grew up in Karachi, Pakistan, Nazabad, J Block. And it was like very Pakistani. Like I spent a lot of times like extended family, just going to the marketplaces back. Did you go to a marketplace back home?
Marketplace, it means like go to buy vegetables.
Vegetables, chicken.
Yeah, of course, always.
And it's just like such a cool experience, like just telas, you know, just street everything. You ask for a chicken, it's in a big bunch of chicken. They just take one chicken, put it into the foot, right? So like I went from there to Texas before I moved to Canada. So like I'm really fortunate that I got to like do 3 types of very different places. Because like I would say Karachi is very different than Texas, but Texas is very different than here. So like that was something fun that I'm really grateful I got to have that full experience.
You mentioned after Pakistan, you moved to
Houston, Texas.
Okay. So tell us how that was different. So in which term, because recently you just mentioned that it was not that different.
Yeah.
In which terms?
So here, I'll tell you in which ways it's very different. One, you don't have to boil the water anymore, right? You can just open it and you can just pani pizza and everybody's healthy. Nobody's stomach hurts. There's obviously other, there's less donkeys, right? You know the difference between 2 freaking countries. The areas that it wasn't different in, the area I moved to was called Harris County, and there's like 20 brown kids in my class, which I didn't expect that you go to school and the first day, like this is Noman, this is, a lot of Patels, a lot of Alis, and I didn't expect that. So that was really cool. I would say the most big adjustment you have to make in Texas is that people are way louder.
I just saw that little smile. Just tell me about that.
Well, so people say things that like, they should keep to themselves, but they speak their mind. It's a very freedom-oriented state. So it's like freedom of speech, you can say what you want. You can have guns. Like I had friends who had guns. Their parents had guns in the car, like just mounted to the back of the car. It's just right. It's right there. There's a gun. There's a shotgun. People would have animals that shouldn't have as pets, like pythons. You can have you can have a tiger. There's no laws that you can't have a tiger there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like, I just visited 2 months ago. I went to visit my brother-in-law in Austin. His neighbor has alpacas. Has just 2 alpacas in the front lawn, just sitting there. It's like a big goat-like. It's not like a goat, but it's an alpaca. It's a different animal. It's like a llama, just a bit smaller. And Texas is, it's in the way they carry themselves, but the people themselves like freedom and they protect freedom. Over here, something happens, you tell me to stay indoors, people just stay indoors, right? You like it, you follow the rules. It's a very rule what's best for the community. In Texas, there's a certain level of like, individual expression first. And that leads to a lot of like fun and crazy individuals. And like, if you live there, you fall in love with these people and characters because they are like very colorful and loud and boisterous. And then it makes you appreciate that more. I didn't love it while I was there. I was like, people here are loud. I kind of, I got it. I was loud as well. And just kind of learned to be.
We have desi.
Yeah, a little bit. And then when I moved here, I appreciated it more. Because it's like people here are overall a bit more reserved. And there's pros and cons to it. So like, that's what was fun to be able to say I lived in Pakistan. I was in Houston for over 10 years. I'm from middle school, high school, university. I went to the same high school as Beyonce. She graduated 1 year before me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. My high school.
What a chance to work out?
My sister went to school with her, but I didn't go to school with her. I went to a predominantly black high school. Almost everybody was black. You'd be like 70% black, 20% Mexican, 8% Asian, and then maybe 1% white and 1%, I don't know. I'm bad at math, so I don't know what that last 1% was. But yeah, not a lot of white people at all. And that was Harris County. And that's where we lived until my dad got robbed at gunpoint and outside of our apartment.
No way.
And then he moved us to the white part of town, Sugarland. And it was just, everything was super nice. And then I realized my dad had this money, he just was saving money, keeping us in the ghetto. But yeah, we moved to Sugarland and everybody was frankly, I did not enjoy it. And then 2.5 years after that, we moved up here. So.
You mentioned that your father was being robbed at a gunpoint.
Yeah.
So do you happen to remember the names about that?
No, it was right in our parking lot, and he had just given me a box. We just came back from the flea market. We had a perfume business at the flea market. He's like, "Hey, take this inside." So I took it inside. I came back out. As I'm coming back out, he comes in. And I was like, "Isn't there more boxes to get?" And he just like, he just has this weird, nervous smile on his face, and he just like sits me down, closes the door, locks it. He's like, "I just got robbed." He calls Visa to cancel his card.
I'm so sorry. This situation is so intense.
Oh yeah,
you're making it so smooth and so.
He took it pretty lightly, which was nice. So he would just like call. He's like, "I just got robbed. I need to cancel my Visa." And they were like, "Did you just buy $120 worth of beers?" And you're like, "No." They're like, "Wow, you just made this purchase at this gas station, just like the gas station across." So he's like, it's funny because we're in here. You know where he is. He said that gas station had a gun buying a lot of beer. But yeah, it was, we lived in the ghetto. That kind of stuff happens. Wasn't the first time my dad got robbed at gunpoint. He worked at a church's chicken as a manager. Got robbed at gunpoint. That time they hit him with the gun because they asked him for the register money. He gave it to them. And then they asked for the money in the safe. Every church's chicken has a safe. And he's like, "I don't have the code." And the robber hit him in the head and then ran out. The stupid thing is my dad did have the code, but he didn't want to give it to him like it's his money. Can you imagine? He knows the code, but he knows that this robber doesn't know that. And he's just like, "I don't have the code." He's trying to save church's chicken some money.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they gave him promotions, but I thought I was like, "Papa, you have a family."
Exactly. And I believe that is not worth it more than your life.
Yeah, I believe so too. There wasn't a lot of money. Whatever money there was, no matter what amount, it's probably not worth it.
I used to work in a rec room, and that was kind of my second job there. When I landed here, was kind of my second job. And over there, the very first day, we are being told by our managers who was doing orientation, "Hey, see, at any given point, somebody came in and showed you the gun or anything and tell you to give the money. No questions asked. Open it and hand it over to you. That's it.
Yeah.
You don't have to ask anything."
Yeah, you got to tell immigrants that.
Exactly.
Because white people know. They know to give immigrants, you're like, "Hey, just so you list the job. You were insured, So
no, even though the funny part, so my manager who was taking the orientation, he was bad though. Okay. And the reason I'm only mention that because I do believe that as a brown people and the black, we are very proactive to the fighting and stuff like that. In that situation, somebody just point a gun at me, or even at anyone from a black community or brown community.
Yeah.
Our first instinct, instead of doing this,
I know it's a very common thing. It's like, all right, I got to fix the situation, and yeah, you're absolutely right.
So that was the reason I just bring that into that. Even though being a black, even though I know this core instinct is this to fight. But because he want us to be safe, his name is Bill, and because he want us to be safe, he just mentioned no question asked. This is not your money.
All right,
Cineplex is a big giant company.
Yeah,
it's how much it is? $300.
Yeah,
do you think 300 is more than your life?
No,
and no way.
No.
So that was the very first thing he told us. It's okay.
This is good.
Life is more important.
No, definitely. I worked at TD as a teller for a little while, frontline, and we went all for training into Toronto, like one of those big buildings, and they were training 42 tellers that day, and it was like training, like there's a lot of us, but there's like the training was like, okay, if somebody gives you a note and it says, "I have a gun, give me all your whatever," then this is how you do it. You go over there, and there's like this big fake bag of money. And you bring it and you give it to them. And
Like banks have the fake bag of money?
Yeah, banks have at least a couple of stacks of cash that are fake. And what they do have inside it, they look real actually. But once you get outside of the branch for X amount of seconds, it explodes in a blue dye that covers everything, and that stays on you for weeks. But they also said that, like, the person's like, you don't play around with your life. Give them the money if they, So yeah, the branch I was at got robbed. I've been at 2 branches. One of them was robbed while I was there.
Over here on
At the Heartland Scotia Bank.
in Canada?
Oh yeah.
No way.
Mavis and Britannia, right? Like in the Marshalls Plaza. I don't know. But I was working there as a financial services advisor, just giving people accounts and mortgages and stuff. And a guy came in and very little talking, just had a jeans and a tight white t-shirt and a mask and a gun and a bag.
He came in with a mask.
Yeah, he just came in and just very little talking, just literally came in and just jumped over the counter in one, just like a friggin' basketball player. Just jumped over the counter, just pushed people away. And TD has these automatic machines that you have to put, it's your transact. That's all the money you're going to get. Scotiabank used to have these wooden registers that you can lift up, and there's thousands of dollars. And only Scotiabank had that. They were the last people to modernize to these machines. And this dude just, I think within 2 minutes, took probably $8,000-$9,000, because that's how much you can get out of each till really quickly. Yeah, they don't on purpose ever give you the exact number, so people don't. They're like, well, it's good to rob a Scotia. It's like $17,000 sounds like it's a good easy money, But man, it was so easy, because I was in my office with a customer, but it's a glass door, so I'm just like, I just talking to them like 1 second, and they're like looking, what are we going on? And you know what? Yeah, it was so quick. And also, as soon as I see a gun, I'm just like, I'm like, my job is to keep you safe. We're not going out there. And that was one robbery. And then the TD I used to work at got robbed. Fantastic story, by the way. They covered it in the news, but they didn't go into any of the details. But it got robbed before it opened. So every TD opens 3 hours before it opens. Okay. So 3 hours before the doors open, there's somebody inside who is a manager or the head manager generally that goes in, does a check inside, and then comes out and nods at the assistant manager to come in. They both come in, lock the door, and they do all the openings. Start up all the machines, turn all the lights on, open the safe. That's their job. So when the one manager goes inside, checks everything, comes out to nod at the other manager, as that other manager is coming in, this guy just literally, according to them, just came out of a bush with a gun and was just like, ladies, you know the drill, we're going in. Don't push X button, don't trip X alarm. Every branch has, I'm not going to mention them, that has at least 3 different fail safes of what you do when you're being robbed. So the person, you can alert somebody without he seemed to know all of them. He was just like, don't push X, like that button, everything has a name. Honestly, if you've been through teller training, you know all of it, because every branch has the same security. So he took them to the safe. He was like, here's a black bag. Give me B denominations. Don't give me US currency with serial numbers. Don't give me any of that. There's these names for these cartridges, fake money. Don't give me those. And I want money in pounds, and something like the 2 to 3 things that are hard to trace. Traveler checks can be, certain traveler checks are very easy to trace to have a number. There's the other types you buy that are like very liquid. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he few $100,000.
So I believe it might be the insider's job, right?
Oh yeah, at least insider, or like somebody who knows an insider, and like that can be so many people that it's hard to narrow it down, because tellers are they just hire like a few dozen tellers every week, right?
Because even though right now when you mentioned that each back branch open 3 hours earlier before the opening time,
yeah.
So that is kind of new thing for me,
right?
So somebody knows that, and he also knows that manager will come out to nod at what time to come out from the bush.
All you have to do is stick around for 24 hours, and it's very easy to understand their anybody's patterns, because the pattern doesn't change from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's the same working hours. They're going to have to figure out how do we open, because none of them are 24 hours.
The main important thing is he knows everything inside us.
That was the scary part. And that's the part where as soon as you realize this person, you can't really do anything they have a gun. You make them suspicion anyway.
They want to shoot you.
Yeah. So I know for a fact they didn't retrieve any of them. But like, they don't, nobody wants that in the news, obviously. Because then it's just like,
oh, your TD being robbed.
Yeah, like, you don't want to give people ideas and whatnot. Yeah. But they do have a lot of security. There are all these weird buttons hidden all over. I accidentally pressed one once. It's literally an armed robbery button. So like, police come in very aggressively. And then you have to be like, oh, I don't know this. I didn't know what this is. I thought it was a light. It was my second week. They're like, you pushed this button? I'm like, I don't even know what button. I've never seen that button in my life. But yeah, I went from that to software sales. And that's when I realized that like software sales pays pretty well, alhamdulillah. But that's when I realized like, oh, this doesn't make me that happy. It helps with certain things. Like just I gotten married is very expensive. The shadis are stupid expensive. And then once you realize like, oh, just getting a certain type of job won't make you happy, then like you got to figure out what makes you happy. And then you just got to start doing stuff. So that's kind of how I got into stand-up. I got into a few other things before that, but that's how I got.
So what time did you make a plan to move here from US to Canada?
So when 9/11 happened, we were there and we had an immigration status that was fine. But when 9/11 happened, they like put a lot of things on pause very abruptly. George W. Bush had just been the governor of Texas. It was just some other conservative guy, Rick Perry, I believe. When 9/11 happened, they said that, okay, if you're under this immigration class, they can't deport you because you haven't done anything wrong, but they won't let you renew your driver's license, work permit, or study permit.
Wow.
Because you're Muslim, you're from one of these 14 Muslim countries, and 9/11 has just happened, so they want to do a background check on you, which takes 8 years to do. And during those 8 years, you can't renew your work permit, study permit, or driver's license.
Technically, for 8 years, you cannot do that.
They're trying to get rid of you without deporting you. Legally, they can't deport you, but they can make things very difficult for you, so you leave.
You cannot survive.
Now, what the thing is, they don't realize immigrant mentality. Because all immigrants are like, I'd rather do this here than go back home, right? Like, for the most part. So yeah, that's right. When that happened, my parents were like, I was, going to university, and they were like, oh, you can't go to university. Like, that's, what future are you going to have? It doesn't really affect my parents because this rule was there to only affect people of a certain age specifically. If you're over 50, it doesn't apply to you. If you're under 18, it doesn't apply to you. So it didn't apply to like my siblings, but it applied to me. And then I was like, okay, maybe I move to Australia or England or Canada. And then eventually we decided to just move, my parents, my brother, and myself, and moved up here about 14 years ago. And then went through the process here, and then got our PR about, 11 years ago. It's been so long now. It seems like yesterday. And my citizenship maybe 9 years ago. So yeah, I would say like happiest day outside of like having a baby. Having a baby is kind of a wild ride. It wasn't like happy. It was like, oh, thank God. Just like really. But the immigration thing was a big load off.
And you mentioned that after 9/11, it was very hard. Government makes it very hard for the Muslim people.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little deep question I want to ask you. As being a Muslim, or even if we exclude that religious portion out of that, how hard it is to be in the States as being a basic?
You know what? I'll say this. America, unfortunately, has these cycles of picking a group of people and being, on a big scale, being a certain level of racist and bigoted towards people. And it's seasonal, almost, I feel like. When 9/11 happened, it was at a fever pitch. It was as high, literally the next day, a Punjabi guy was shot working at a gas station. Literally the next day. Obviously, like you and I both also understand he was Punjabi, like which people there didn't even understand, like they didn't understand that this guy is not even Muslim. Not that it matters, but like that's how ignorant people are, where they would shoot somebody who didn't even have an idea. They're just like, that guy's probably Muslim, and they shot this guy at a gas station. That was a crazy time though. Like, I don't know how many. I know, like I was a history major at one point, so I know that America has gotten that way at different times, putting Japanese people in internment camps. Long history of prejudice against Black people, but like just to see it go from one day being fine, and then like 3 days later being at a place where, it was actually scary because people were getting either shot or beat up for just having a Muslim name or looking Muslim, or, just wearing the hijab. It's like a big target all of a sudden. So like guys like you and me are, especially at our age and our physicality, would only feel a certain level of threatened. But if you're an old man with a beard, or an old auntie with a hijab, or a young girl going to school with a hijab, or just something different, if you have a pugri, if you just have something a little bit different and you're like brown or African, it was a very uncomfortable time. The hardest part was people that you have known for a long time start questioning you. So what kind of Muslim are you? What do you guys believe in? Do you feel like, and they ask you a question on political things, and like the dumbest questions, like the dumbest question. That's the problem. It's not even just clarifying of basic things. It's just like, they're asking you like, you think it's okay to kill people? You're like, no. I've known you for years. Like that's the weird part was, and you kind of try to understand as you have to talk to yourself to take it as an opportunity, but it is disappointing because it's one thing for things on the news and the president to do stuff for a government. It's different when it's like a neighbor you've been waving to for like, just like you and me, when we would see each other, it was like this, like a vibe of somebody you see, you're like happy to see them and you wave at them, you have a quick conversation. Exactly. It would be the same if like something happened and you're like, so, you're like questioning random things about me, or do you think women should have rights? Like you've met my mom, man. Like, I do, but like, yeah, it's just like all sorts of weird shit, like really all sorts of crazy stuff. So it was uncomfortable for a while. You understand that some people are like that. Other people are very different. They're literally the opposite. They're like literally the opposite. So it's just, you look at everything as a learning experience, but, I think it's gotten a lot better over the last X amount of years. Mm-hmm. And it should. I mean, there's internet. People have a lot more understanding of what brown culture is, and they also admire people from our culture, whether it's for artistic expressions or, I mean, in Canada, we're like, we're doing we're as intertwined with the Canadian culture as you generally can be. So yeah.
Talking about the racism, this was the one part which you face while living in Texas states, right?
Yeah.
How about here? Did you ever felt any kind of racism here? When I'm talking about racism, it does not supposed to be the like classic racism like 90s based on color, religion, or anything stuff like that.
Right.
I'm talking about the photo racism as well. Photo racism is something like you are being judged, even at a workplace, even might be by your employer or by anyone, based on your status, based on any other thing which is not in mainstream right now.
Yeah, I mean, we came over as refugees, so like my SIN number started with a 9, and like anytime I would get a job, I was fortunate. I'll say that first off before going into any examples, that like pretty much 99% of the people I interacted with are fantastic. Yeah, there's always a couple of people that stand out that are, racist or just ignorant. I would say compared to Texas, really nothing. Like anything I would tell you about is like very superficial. It's about somebody making just an unnecessary comment in a work meeting, like a joke that went off sideways. And that's something that I have learned, not like a joke or an underhanded comment that they maybe didn't know exactly. Compared to what I've seen, it's easy for me to say like, oh, that was a bad joke. And that person probably in their heart of hearts regrets it. Compared to in Texas, I'm like, oh, this person hates me. And if you let them, would probably try to physically harm immigrants for no reason. If there were no laws, this person would be just hitting immigrants. And I haven't really, experienced somebody saying like, I worked at Walmart at the night shift, and somebody said a stereotypical thing about brown people. They thought everybody would laugh. Nobody laughed, and they were like, "Sorry, that was a joke." It's a very mean thing, but that feels very different than like the kind of stuff I went over in Texas, man. And like, if you even compare what I went over in Texas to what people went through in Texas 10, 15 years ago, then there'd be, I like to think the amount of racism or ignorance is shrinking. We're just a lot more aware of it, but I'm sure even today, like crazy shit, it's just, crazy stuff happens, man. It's, people are flawed, unfortunately. So.
Even talking about the racism, I have to step back myself a little in order to digest this whole thought. That because as an immigrant, if somebody moves from one place to a place like States, USA or Canada, so according to me, they definitely are moving for their better life, right? And they, even in their wildest dream, they never expect that they might be treated or they might have to face racism. So it's kind of deep.
Yeah, you have to also like tell people, and if you meet new people, like I used, when I was working at the bank, or like we do some volunteer work with new immigrants, you have to kind of explain to them like, hey, some people are this way, especially if they have kids. They will have to explain to their kids if something weird happens, why it happened. It's not their fault. Like kind of explain the dynamics of, so it's just like you have to kind of tell immigrants. We had a bunch of Syrian refugees come over, and you have to like talk to them about it. Like, hey, some people don't like refugees, some people don't like Syrians, some people don't like Muslims. And yeah, it's a part of the immigrant experience.
But it's still though deep, because let's say there is a 3 or 4 year small girl, right?
Yeah.
Now somebody like old man said something mean to this little girl.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine what is going on emotionally level to that little kid.
I know. And that's why, like, I mean, I've got a little kid as well, and we were going to like name him Noah. And then he came out kind of light skinned.
It's a good name.
And that's, you know what? I was thinking about it. And then when he was born a little bit light skinned, I was just like, I can't spoil him. You can't name a little white kid in a white country Noah. So we named him Hassan. So I was like, now you feel like me. Like, you got to go on that no-fly list like everybody else. But it is something that you want them to feel and understand that they are different. And that's a part of where they're from. And people are going to sometimes make fun of their names a little bit, make fun of like their parents' name. They're going to make fun of the food you eat. And like, it's a part of the immigrants. Like, that's what I would like to tell my kid. Like, this is a part of our experience. This is what separates us. If you were to ever wonder what separates us from other people, it's like, yeah, the thing they make fun of you for is what separates you. And you figure out how to deal with it. Like, it's a sense of humor, which is something I developed growing up in Houston. You just had to, and things were crazy things that happen. It's the only way to kind of deal with it. You internalize all of it, you probably explode or become like a bitter person or not be happy. But yeah, I think whether they're immigrants or kids, you gotta like sit them down and like have these small conversations. How a small percentage of the people are assholes.
Yeah, people are people. Right?
People are people. God bless them.
So yeah, talking about the sense of humor. Tell me how your story as a comedian starts. How that little seed came from where into your mind.
So, like a lot of comedians, I was, you hang out with people say like, oh, you're really funny, do you stand up? And that would happen every now and then. And then one of my good friends like said, hey, like he said something and I said something and he laughed. He was like, where did you hear that? I was like, no, I just made that up when you said this. And he wouldn't believe me, which infuriated me. But he's like, no, you didn't make that up. Where did you hear that? I was like, no, you said this, and that's the first thing that he's like, you didn't do that quickly in your head. Where did you hear it? And he wouldn't believe me. Like a good friend of mine. And off the back of that, I'd been thinking about doing stand-up for a long time, but literally that day what I started doing was anytime I had a funny conversation, I would sit down, email myself that conversation, and put in the subject line the word joke, and then write out what happened. And I did that over a few months, thinking like, okay, if I'm going to do an open mic where you just go and sign up your name and do 3 minutes of stand up for nobody, then this is like the stuff that, I can possibly look. But I still wasn't doing stand up. And then I tore my ACL. I was playing, I was doing this thing called Brazilian Jiu Jitsu where you would wrestle people. And I had this guy in something called the lockdown where you controlled one of their legs with both of your legs. And this guy was a much bigger, 6'4". We're both competitive wrestlers. And he bent my leg in a way that it hurt it didn't hurt a lot, but it hurt in a new way. Like I've never had pain like that before, but it hurt a lot. I was like, whoa. And then I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to go. Oh, I just left. And that weekend I was playing basketball in Milton, and I landed, I wouldn't even say landed funny, landed normal. And I felt like an explosion went off in my knee. Like
Playing basketball.
Yeah, playing basketball. Like I thought everybody in the mosque could hear it. It was like in the gym of the mosque. And then, I went to the doctor. He said it feels unstable. We're going to do an MRI. They did an MRI. They're like, you tore your ACL. I tore all of them, ACL, MCL, and whatever is on the outside.
I'm not sure what is ACL, but my understanding is something in between these.
Yeah, the most important ligament you have is in the middle of your knee, and it holds all of it together. The other two ligaments can heal themselves. The one in the middle, which is the most important one, can't even heal itself. So if you tear your ACL, it is going to be a pretty catastrophic surgery for your knee, because they're going to have to go inside of it. And you either take a piece of your hamstring, a muscle from your hamstring, and put it in there and sew it all up. Or you take your Achilles heel, like a dead person's Achilles heel, and you put that in there. So I went with the hamstring option. Another one is you can use the patella tendon, which is right under the knee, and fold it up into your, which is also very strong. But the fastest healing, in any healthcare, you don't get as many options with America. You're not paying for it. So the hamstring was the one they recommended, and that's what they did. And then I had to, I hit a awesome level of depression. I don't know what to call it. I don't get depressed, like people who have depression. But something really bad happens, and I get very sad. And that's what I would call depression.
And this happened after your surgery?
Yeah. So after I tore my ACL, before that, I was trying to qualify for the Pan American Games in Jiu Jitsu. Before that, I was a semi-pro boxer, did amateur boxing. That's how I got these fun little marks on my face. And before that, I was a semi-professional tennis player going back to Texas. And I was like, I considered my whole identity around the athletics that I was doing. If you ask somebody like, what's Syed? Like, oh yeah, he does sports. That's the whole thing. And then when all of this happened with my knee, and I just got married, moved to Toronto, away from my family, and it was winter. You couldn't even drive back and forth. That's when I hit a certain level of I need to do something, because this is not going, I got to do something. I don't like feeling a certain way for an extended period of time. So I was bicycling, because you can bicycle when you're rehabbing your knee. It's a good idea, actually. And I heard laughter coming from the basement of a building. There's these little windows. I'm looking inside, 30 people, a light, and a mic. And I just went downstairs, and there was just, you can watch stand-up. And then I Googled it, and there are 20 of those places a night in Toronto. There's at least 10 places where you can just sign your name and do stand-up and watch. So I came in and watched a few times, and it was horrible. Everybody was bad, and that's what these are there for. You're either doing it for the first few times, or you're a good comic who's trying out stuff that they've never tried before.
Mm-hmm. No,
experimenting. People who come to the audience are paying either around $5 or nothing. These are free. And these aren't great shows, but this is what a comedy show looks like. And it was this romantic idea of a comedy show, but it was right there. This is what I heard on podcasts. It's called open mics. You can sign up. Everybody who's ever done comedy starts off this way. And I went home. I went to my Google, went to advanced search, typed in the subject joke, and these 20 or 30 emails popped up that I sent myself. And then like a month after that, I messaged my best friend. I'm like, hey, just so you know, I'm going to go and do an open mic at this place called the Oddlington. Pretty amazing open mic on Monday nights. And I waited there after writing my name. I think I was 37th on the list. So like 37 people go before you using 5 minutes. Around like 11:30. You know what the sad thing, I've never said this. I tried to do it 2 weeks prior and my turn came up and I wrote on a note that I have to go and I gave it to the guy who was running it. And I just, I couldn't make myself, it got very scary by the time it's your turn. Especially you've been waiting for 31 people as a 32nd person. You're like, oh my God. I don't know why. In hindsight, it makes no sense. At the moment, it made all the sense in the world. But I left and I felt so, like, this felt horrible. This felt like, it felt worse than the depression. To like wait all that time and then not do it. And then what I did next time was I told my buddy, I'm like, hey, because now like, if I've told somebody, I'm going to have to go. Otherwise, they're like, hey, I came, like
Nobody knows if I didn't do anything.
So yeah. So I had a buddy come and it was my turn. I went up, I did my set, and my buddy left, shook hands with him, like, thanks for coming out. And then while I was driving home, even though the set didn't go as well as I wanted to, it was way better than anything I could have imagined in my head. Because in your head, you're imagining, what I imagine is everybody is staring at me like I'm a dumbass. So it went, by all things considered, I was like, oh, yeah. I felt like I was supposed to do that more. So
It gives you that kick, huh?
I think it depends on who you are and your personality. Because the thing is, I have standards for stand-up because I used to watch a lot of stand-up. Some people are just like insane and doing a bad set doesn't bother them. They just don't mind any level of, if they see one person smiling to their head, they're like, they're fantastic. For me, I was like, well, I can work at this. That's what I realized from doing that. I was like, I was listening to my set, which is something most people don't do, but I was listening to it as I was driving home. I was like, oh, this area people were laughing. I just kept talking, even though I should have paused. And this area I was going really fast, even though there was a laugh there, I just ran over it. And immediately I was like, oh, there's 6 things in here to fix. And that really helped me. I was like, I'm going to go again in 2 weeks. Went back.
When you said there were 6 things to fix, so
yeah.
You realized that at the very moment when you're speaking that? When you came back on?
Yeah, I realized that when I was driving home, I listened to the set. It's only 3 minutes. The open mics are 3 to 5 minutes, only 3 minutes. And I just immediately was very easy for me to realize what I was doing wrong. And the good thing about anything is that like the hardest part is having standards of what you, in a creative endeavor, it's very entrepreneurial. It's only as good as you're willing to make it. If you were to open up a shop, you can say the shop is ready. I have a register. I have what I'm selling. We're good to go. Even with this podcast, whatever standards you have in terms of, I want it to feel this way. I want to make it special. I want to have food. I want to have drinks. I want to have an ambiance and everything. This is you having a standard for an end product that you have a feeling about. And that's the main thing that most people, I've done many podcasts. I've done podcasts where it's just me and a phone and a guy, that's fine. That's their standard and, good for them. But it's when people actually have a standard of what they're trying to get, those people should keep doing it because it's just a matter of time. I learned that through anything. That was a good thing about doing all those sports, that I knew what made people succeed and fail. And it wasn't their footwork or their coordination. It was like, if you have a little bit of talent and you're willing to polish that off until it's shiny, you'll be respectable in whatever you do. And that was when I realized, I can see so many small things that I would do differently. Immediately, I was like, I got to do this again. And soon, that's the only thing I promised myself. I got to do this again inside of the next month is get back up. And
interesting.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned creative industry. And especially for the jokes, I believe you cannot present the same joke to the same audience twice.
So there is a lot of truth to that. So one, if I'm producing for if there's a producer, and the way comedy works is that you do these open mics, you feel like you've gotten good enough, and you ask an actual producer of a show, somebody who puts on paid shows, people are on there on dates, on corporate events, this place is rented out for this purpose, and now you're taking up 5 or 10 minutes on the show. If somebody is regularly going to book you, that audience, there are always 20% people coming back. You ideally, and this is a producer will tell you, is like, if you have more stuff, give me a shout. So like, you don't want to come back with the same. It's okay to have same stuff and some different stuff, but they want to make sure their audience is getting a slightly different feel. And that's why you want to have like a variety of different shows you're doing and different producers that like you. And honestly, it's really easy because it's a meritocracy. It's based on, if you do a good job, they like you, they ask you to come back. All of these producers are selling $15, $20, $30 tickets. If you can bring like really good humor, you're an asset. It's not them liking your haircut or your name or how immigrant-y you are or aren't. And that's what I love about two things, sports and comedy, is that those are the two areas where I'm like, as much as it can be, it's a fairness of a meritocracy. Like, it's how good you are. Like, I grew up in Texas. People hate Black people. But the culture of Texas, the best musician, a lot of the best comedians, athletes, that's how you win over the populace. Is like, man, that person really knows how to play the piano. Like, it's undeniable. Same thing with comedy. It's like when a room is really laughing, the person could have been somebody who doesn't love immigrants, just needed to have one immigrant on so that, it looks fine for the show. But once they kind of see you perform, they're like, oh, then you have to, if you know what you're looking at, you have to respect it. Mm-hmm. So like, that's the one thing I do love, is that I've been really lucky with like the amount of producers that are like, oh wow, this guy does a good job.
So how you manage to be creative at the same time and try to produce new stuff every time?
You know what?
Don't you think that's very challenging part?
Dude, that's actually that's a good like advanced level question for what we do. Because the key is to realize that you need different shows for different types of shows, meaning you're going to have these A-level shows that are at Yuck Yucks, Absolute Comedy Bar, and these are paid shows. People are there to have a good time. They're not everybody on the show. I've done many shows where everybody else on the bill has been on TV, right? They're comedians that are full-time, some of them. This is all they do. Like, their whole money comes from comedy. And that level of show, you're going to put out your best material, put in the best order, maybe move some things around in the order to make it exciting. But like, and then there's a second tier of shows where it's slightly different. You get to play around with it a little bit more. I just did this show, sold out show, really good. Day before yesterday at Social Capital Theater. I get to do 15 minutes, first 7, super tight. People are crying, laughing. 4 minutes of kind of newish stuff, and then a good close out of like 2 to 3 minutes on like really good stuff. So it's like still a good experience. And then you have these shows that are open mics or close to it, where I have a show not this coming Monday, but the Monday after. It is this coming Monday, and it is a new joke show. And that's how it's advertised, is Toronto's best comedians doing brand new jokes. And I do those and open mics. And I have a whole process on where I have my best jokes, the things in rotation I'm trying, and these like 30 ideas of something that like I'm trying to work out. Like something like I was at a dispensary. And everybody was a little bit high. The people working there, the people in line, everybody was high, and everything went smoothly. And I was like, you know what? This is why alcohol should be illegal. If I go into an LCBO and everybody's drunk, it's gonna be it's not gonna be okay. So I'm like, okay, that's it. That's thought is funny and true. How do you make it more than a funny, interesting thought? Because it is like, you're like, that's definitely true, but like, there has to be something that can take up a notch. So like these newer shows, you find it's hard to string. When I'm doing my best shows, everything is like, literally, I just had a kid. I left my wife. This is our first date. I moved here from Texas. This is how my parents moved. naming my, like, it's all in one order where people can see it as one story and they're like, wow, that was a one long funny story. But in these like open mics, it's hard to like, these are all such random thoughts. Like I went to watch turkey hunting for the first time last week. Like it's hard to have something else that's around hunting or turkey, you know, like,
Sure.
so to answer your question, you have to work your butt off because you can't present the same stuff to the same people. So you have to work your butt off to have like 3 caliber of shows, because you always need to keep your sharpest stuff as sharp as possible for these just for laughs level, you know, almost audition comedy shows. But you also need to be trying brand new stuff. So you're not like stale doing the same, you know, 8 to 15 minutes, moving it around, which is good. You'll have a very tight 8 to 15 minutes. But like the only way to grow as a comedian is to be ready to tell a joke and then watch everybody just stare at you like, and that's what, you know, it's tough. Like I said, I had a really good show at Social Capital this past Friday night, and then but there was a couple of jokes in there like literally nobody laughed, and I was like, you know what, I agree with you. Like I don't even know I was telling them, and they as long as you put them in the right places where you've already earned your credibility and you told them you're trying out some new stuff, they like laugh harder at you acknowledging like that was not ready for this moment. They're there for the experience. So like you learn as you get older, and like I've been doing this for about 8 years now, so you kind of figure out like, all right, there's a place for everything. You just come down where you do it.
It's very interesting though, because you mentioned that you did some joke which was not landed as you expected.
Oh man, yeah.
And I believe that might have happened very common.
That happens, especially at those tier 1 and tier 2 shows. That's what should happen. Yeah, that happens.
How do you deal with that? I mean, for me right now, I'm imagining that part.
Yeah.
So for a moment, I feel like I might freeze.
Yeah, that could happen.
So how do you cope with that particular situation?
You know what? Here's it. And I don't want to walk around the question, but like once you know how to like really kill, like you've had a few good sets with some consistency that are like, you were the best comedian on that show, and you listen to the recording and it's all like exactly how you wanted. People are laughing. You realize like that's there and that's in you. And to make more of that, you know, you're going to have to do, at the beginning, you don't know if you're funny or not. That's when it's hard to take these like bombs where you don't know, you know, what's funny or not. And I would say once you realize that's just a part of the process to be able to have these fantastic shows, man, I don't know what to tell you. It's like eating watermelon. You're going to eat some seeds, you know, like, what are you going to do? Not eat watermelon? It's freaking delicious. So it's true. But yeah, it is no exaggeration. Even this is tough. I had 2 jokes that I like really was excited for, and neither one of them went the way. And it's disappointing in my heart. But like, you do a good job of just playing it off to the audience as like, I agree with you. Yeah, that one I need to work on some more. And I also do a really good job of like, when I get to this area where there's new jokes, I go new joke, old joke, new joke, old joke. So it's always good, new, and then goes good, and then into my closer. And I've watched a lot of comedy, and I feel like if somebody can establish themselves as very funny in the first 5 minutes, like very, very funny, like your best jokes first 5 to 7, after that, you can take 3 minutes as long as you're like, I'm going to just try some stuff out, and then you like go into it. People don't think any less of you. You already earned your credibility, and if you get back to your good jokes, they'll come right back to you. So like, I used to have a different mentality. It was like, let me get out the bad stuff at the beginning, and that way it'll close out really strong. But once you lose that credibility, it takes actually a second, even with a good joke, to gain it back. They're like, instead of laughing, they'll just smile. They're like, you've already established yourself as an unfunny person for 3 minutes. It's hard to like come back to good jokes after that. So I went to a Bill Burr comedy show last year, and he did this first 10 minutes, did like an hour-long show plus that. Like it hurt how much you laugh. Like your back hurt, you're holding people. And after that, he like calmed down and tried out some stuff, and it was still like, you already like loved him so much from the hilarity that you were like, okay, yeah, you'll go along with it. And that's what I'm trying out right now. Maybe I'll change that as time continues, but
interesting.
It's also, just to be very honest, maybe I'm weak, right? Like maybe I have an insecurity that I need to be liked first before I make you come with me to these stupid jokes. Because maybe as I develop more, maybe I will say, you know what, start off weak and then I'll win them back and take that as a challenge, right? So like, I can't say this definitively. I can tell you what's working right now. But yeah, some really great comedians put themselves in a hole early and then come back with their, stronger stuff after that. So yeah.
Do you think that within the stand-up comedy, because we are talking about that thing, psychology play a major role?
In what sense? What do you mean?
Because you just mentioned that in the very, very first 5 minutes, you have to earn the credibility.
Right.
Yeah. So then later on, you can explain certain things or experiments you think. Then in the last, because you know that is kind of an ending, then you have to throw a punch out.
Right.
So do you think that first portion, as you mentioned, building a credibility plays along the way, and that is how psychology work as well? As long as you maintain the credibility, people trust you. People trust you that you are a comedian, and no matter after that, if you put something a little which is not very good in as well as the laughter experience, people will still digest that because you already make your credibility.
I think this is true for life. I treat every job when I get to a new place. They've hired me because my hair looks a certain way, I talk a certain way. They hope the best for me. That's why they hired me. And I make sure to deliver on exactly what they hired me for and then some. You want people, you're going to get up there, they're like, all right, he looks like a nice guy, he might be funny. You want to go ahead and check off all of those boxes as quickly as possible. Your shortest, smartest, funniest jokes first, right? Then, just like I would do at work, I'm trying to get them to like me. So after I go short and smart, then I go jokes about myself. My parents moving us to here, me getting married, I'm Pakistani, she's Indian, having a kid. Once you do that, they love you. They love you. And now you can experiment a little bit and laugh things off, right? And then you close out with something with like, that's funny, but very personal, so they remember you. So credibility is short, smart at the beginning. It doesn't have, not long stories that might be the funniest, but short and smart. Something that anybody from any walk of life would be able to say, like, that's humor. That I may not laugh out loud, but that's definitely humor and that's funny. And yeah, I think it's a psychology to answer your question, but I think it's how you get married and stuff. It's just like you go out on a date with somebody, they're going to assume bad things, but they might be assuming the best things about you. And you want to lean into those things and, talk about them, understand their alliances with those things and whatnot. And then you get into like somewhere it's like, hey, I fart when I sleep. You're not going to open with that, right? But that's after they get to like you. I can talk about prostate exams. I can talk about whatever, condoms, ass eating, but they're already established me as a funny guy, a family person, somebody with a baby, somebody who, enjoys family time. And now I'm like, there's too many condom options, right? And they're like, just as a premise, they're like, they won't laugh at if I open with that, there isn't a laughter. They're like, what is this guy? Been talking about condoms all day. But once you establish yourself, and then when you start watching other comedians, you're like, oh, this is what a lot of good comics do. It's like, it's a pattern. So people want to trust you, right? No matter if you go to be entertained, you want to feel like, oh, good, I made the right decision. And the earlier you can get them to validate that, the more freedom you're going to have later on. But it's a work in progress, man. It's, I was going to say there's no books, there's hundreds of books and they're all right and they're all wrong. So it just comes down to what can you make work for yourself? And, that's the good news is they're right there. They'll tell you. The audience lets you know every second of how things are going. So
you can notice from their own reaction, okay?
Oh, yeah.
They're not laughing, so it's not good.
Dude, I used to record myself. I record the audience now. And it's a much better indicator of understanding what do they smile at? What are they like? Oh, they literally would turn over. I have videos of people just telling their friend oh, he's funny. You're like, you notice, and then you see what really makes them laugh and maintain that momentum. And that's it's like an instrument. It's just like you're working up to a crescendo, and the audience is that. And I was like, oh, and I started recording the audience, and oh, I'm never gonna stop because it's a much better indicator of how you're doing compared to just seeing you do your thing.
What is it? Comedy genre. So what type of comedies you do?
Oh, what do you mean?
I mean, I do know that because there was a one Komistan on the Prime, Amazon Prime.
Okay.
So they mentioned there are a few genres. Let's say some people pick certain things within from the audience,
Okay.
and make a fun out of that.
Okay.
And some people try to create their stories and try to tell about themselves,
Right.
and make a crack a joke on themselves.
Right. Right.
So kind of that. So what is your genre?
Yeah. What I love is, and most of my stand-up set is stories that have jokes in them about myself, because everybody has some stuff, funny stuff, especially as immigrants. You're like, you pooped in a hole back home. There's gonna be some funny stories, like compared to stuff here. What I really love is jokes that have like a misdirection at the end. Those are my favorite types of jokes.
When you say misdirection,
Like something that the audience isn't expecting. Like, do you know what a Peloton is? It's like a stationary bike, and it has a screen in front of it, and you can like take exercising classes.
Yep.
So like my dad got one of those, but he doesn't like to do the classes. He likes to put on, you can put on cities, like put on New York, Paris, other countries. And I was like, Papa, what city do you want to put on? And he put on Karachi, Pakistan. And he was on the bike for 5 minutes, and somebody stole the bike. So that is like a misdirection joke where you're like, that's not something you would expect. That, you're a stationary bike, you're at home, somebody stole the bike. Oh yeah, it's Pakistan, right? That is like a good opening joke, because immediately it's something that tells them a little bit about you. Your parents are from Pakistan, but it tells you like, oh, he thinks one step ahead of me on that one. I couldn't have predicted that. So like, you do a couple of those. So those are jokes, and then you have stories, and stories are just fun. About like one of my favorite stories is when I moved from Texas to Canada. I had a bit of a Southern accent. I used to talk a little bit like this normal Southern accent, and I was at work at a warehouse, and a man started making fun of my accent, and everybody laughed at everybody. And it was funny because I was like, "Oh, how are y'all doing?" And the uncle making fun of me, his name was Sandeep, and he was Indian, and he was making fun of my accent so much because he's never gotten to make fun of anybody's accent. Like, he's just, he's an Indian immigrant. Everybody makes fun of his accent. And he was like, there's a brown guy with a Southern accent, and he couldn't stop. And everybody was laughing. And I'm like, it's a part of in my sets. One of the things I like to kind of tell the story. And it's a good story. It's not like, it's not the same as a clean joke with a misdirection, but it's like something true about life that people can understand. And it is humorous, because they would be like, oh yeah, you wouldn't, of course they would, like, if anybody's had their accent made fun of, sometimes they kind of want to, and there's nobody safer to make fun of than a younger brown, it's not even like somebody from a different culture. It's just like, so yeah, you have these stories. I don't really do a lot of like shock, I have like, things that have happened to my life, or these jokes. Crowd work is fun. It really is a lot of fun. If I want to do 100% great show, I don't do it. And I believe in the material. If they say you have 10 minutes, I know I have 10 minutes of really good material. So why would I risk trying to get in a conversation with somebody that might go somewhere or nowhere? If it works, it's fantastic. But if it doesn't work, it's 10 minutes. And that's the kind of stuff I would do at a B show. I wouldn't do that at an A show. Because like, all these people are like, they open for, the best comedians in the world. And some of those shows, like, you're there and you've been asked, like, hey, you're opening for somebody who was on Conan or was on, whatever, Jay Leno 6 times. Now you're opening for them. There's only you. And then after you with them, you do a bad job. It's kind of a weird taste in everybody's mouth before they go into the main act. This person's flying from city to city doing this. You're not there to mess around and just see if you can have fun with this one person with a weird hat.
Exactly.
So, I would say, like, for anybody is like, we are all following our hearts to do what makes you happy, but like, always do a good job for whoever hired you and the audience in front of you, and keep experimenting, because it's fun to like unlock different ways of doing things. So like, people who do different types of jokes, I'll see somebody and I'm like I never do puns and like weird word plays and stuff, but like I saw one person seemed kind of, actually I won't do that. But like, you got to try new stuff constantly because like, you never know what you might enjoy more,
Exactly.
So,
So talking about how you structure your jokes, if I may ask, so you have to write the jokes, right?
Yeah.
Beforehand.
Yeah.
So at that point, what is your thinking process? How you feel like, okay, this joke gonna work
I got you.
before the experiment?
So what I like to do is, on my phone, just quickly record the smallest. As soon as I have the thought that this is a good joke, I record it and I put it in a folder called open mic, right? And then when I have an open mic coming up or a show coming up, they'll have the opportunity to do one of these. I will sit down and listen to all, like I have 30 right now. I listen to all 30 and see if any one of them seems more fun to me, just a fun or ready or just fun. Yeah. And then what I'll do is go pull up the set I want to do and see where this one fits in. So if I have only 7 minutes, I'll say, okay, 7 minutes means 3 minutes of old stuff, 4 minutes of new stuff. It's a A-level show. So like, I'm sorry, a C-level show, the last one. So like, and I'll see what kind of fits into a certain order. Everybody has a weakness. I never want to have a super bad show. So even with like a completely open mic, I'll do opener, something I'm comfortable with and I love. 2 new jokes, middle joke, something that I like. 2 new jokes, close out with something that I like. And that way I kind of have it all like worked out. Some things don't fit anywhere, man. Octopus. I watched a documentary on octopus. Did you know the male octopus is like 1/10 of the size of the female octopus? And when it's time for the male octopus to mate, he will break off one of his arms because one of his arms is actually a penis. It's called the hecticatellus, and he will toss it to the lady, and then she will put it in her mantle cavity, and then she will lay eggs. And that doesn't fit anywhere in anybody's set. Like, there's nothing that goes into that, right?
It's like a Discovery Channel, you're learning something more.
Exactly. I was like, and be like animals. My favorite animal is the octopus. And the next joke might be like completely different than that. It's about, I'm going in for my first prostate exam or whatever.
If I may ask, as you do stand-up comedy, so I do believe there might be one person in the audience who is giving you a hard time.
Yeah, that happens.
So how you deal with that kind of one person?
Yeah, so two ways you can deal with that. One is very directly, and the other one is like a professional. The professional person has a very tight set. They're going to just go through with their set. The line that the person can't cross is they start ruining the show for the people around them. So sometimes that person is really close to you, so it's very easy to notice. It's 100 people. They don't know this person exists. This person might every now and then say stupid stuff right to you, but it's not really ruining anybody's show other than the people at that table. And if that's the situation, you're doing that math while going through your set, listening to this person's nonsense. But you have to realize, like, this is not an intervention. I'm going to stay with my set. I'm going to do my set. I'll warn the next comic there's an asshole on the front left. Try to ignore them, But that's one. Other way, if I notice they're ruining the set, because some people drink alcohol, and if I notice that they're kind of ruining the experience for a few people, like they also are like saying words during the punchline that makes it hard for other people to hear, I'll definitely go ahead and have a conversation with them. And that conversation is really important because you need to leave from that conversation in a way that everybody is still in a happy mood, right? Or at least they don't think you're an asshole. Because sometimes what you're feeling is at a 10. You're feeling this person is ruining my show. I only have this much time and they're, being a complete donkey. But if you, come out too aggressively, your next joke will not work no matter how good it is.
Exactly.
So it's just like you get better. And I like to do like, I just have small, like, hey, are you saying something? And they start talking like, no, actually not. It's a rhetorical question. And then like, I'll go ahead and point it out to somebody else in terms of like, can you hear okay? And they're like, no, actually this guy's being an asshole. And I was like, all right, sir, how does that make you feel? You're an asshole. And they're like, sorry. Like you can like very well just kind of craft a way that somebody else can call them an asshole, which is actually very easy to do when someone's acting like an asshole. it's easy to get the crowd on your side and just keep it going. And other times, like I've asked people to be removed, and everybody applauds when they leave because, like, alcohol is a hell of a drug, man. It's,
Of course.
people, and they're trying to help you. Sometimes they're like trying to be nice. They're just super like they're talking. They're not sure what they're doing, and sometimes they just it makes you become a.
I do believe that is an art in itself.
Yeah.
In order to point someone so respectfully, as well as not deflecting my own anger.
Oh man. Yeah.
Into the audience,
Yeah.
because basically I do feel that if I'm in happy mood, then other person who is watching or standing next to me, they feel that vibe.
100%.
Right. So at any given time, I just switch my mode.
Yeah.
Then I do believe that vibe also carried away along with the another person, and then
I agree, man. It's the first time when you feel angry on stage in front of like 30, 40 people. It's a new feeling.
Exactly.
And it's probably how a teacher feels every day. But it's like, it's like sometimes you'll get like a table of like bachelorettes on a birthday party or a bachelorette party. And they're just super drunk and they're very entitled. They're like, this is about me. And loud as stuff. It's the worst. Especially when it's a larger group of like 10 people or something. Because like, you don't want to kick out 10 people. And if you kick out the person having the birthday party, like, so it's just like, sometimes it's tough, but it's part of the game. And it only happens like every few months. It doesn't happen very regularly. Especially at good shows, people are there to have a good time.
Yeah.
So.
And if I may ask that, let's say, regarding this particular situation and something happened to your show.
Sure.
And after that, something bad happened, right? And you feel like, even though you gave your 200% on the show, but you still feel like there is something missing. If that person wasn't here, it might go and have very well. So that anger or that emotion, do you feel like, do you carry away that emotion along with you back home?
Not if you're somebody who has 3 more shows next week. I would have that if it was like, like a feature show. I'm doing a just for last showcase as a producer, and somebody like just starts talking. And this is my only time to make an impression for, 8 minutes on this person. I would probably, but I've never had that happen. People who come to those shows are pretty respectful. I've had this happen on, actually, you know what? It's, like I said, it's part of the business. I definitely carry it back home. I'm definitely annoyed with it for like days. But that's the great thing about stand-up comedy, is that you are performing. Between now and the end of the month, I'll have 6 shows. So if one of them catches fire, I'll be like, there's another one in 2 days, there's another one. So yeah, it's you don't normally, it's a good lesson. Because like, you have to get very comfortable with failure in this profession, more so than most other things in life. And this failure is very public. It's in front of people, they judge you. And so on something personal, something you thought was funny, that's your sense of humor. It's something you tie a lot to. So like, it's one of the things you learn just doing jokes, is that you have to like get over these failures, a part of the process. And sometimes the joke is the whole show. If the whole show is like, you're going to have to get over that whole show. Because I did a show on Lake Shore a few months ago. People are having a birthday party and they could not care less that there was a comedy show happening. They, in the middle of my set, started singing happy birthday. I just got quiet and just like, I'm not going to talk over happy birthday.
Of course.
And now I'm just like, all right, do your thing. Yeah, I know, like, I was, at the end, I was like, and many more, I just jumped in a little bit and then gave it 10 seconds and jumped right back in. I called my wife. I'm like, I was very upset, but we've all done a bunch of those. If you haven't done those as a comedian, then like, you haven't done all the shows. Yeah, it's just like,
out of a process.
Dude, you can do a show in front of a bunch of mildly drunk people. They'll all laugh at everything. You can say ABCs and they'll be like, see. But like, you got to do all these shows. You got to do them for people who don't relate to you. And that's what makes a comedian worth, their time.
You mentioned that in that particular situation, you called your wife. So how do you think that if this kind of situation happened, how your spouse take that, and how she was able to take that things away from you so that you don't
Yeah.
take that carried away home and did not.
Yeah, my wife is she's when we lived in Toronto, she used to come out to shows before our baby, and like she understood very quickly after coming to like 6-7 shows that I was kind of on a mental mission. And she saw me in like really good shows where it's like very nice, sold. She saw me in these weird shows where you're like, what are you doing here? This is a friggin' alley, like. And then she understood my mentality, and she really respects how hard. Like I'm very organized with this stuff, and I do it even when I'm tired or sad or angry or whatever, stressed about like still unemployed. I'm still doing this, and my wife. I'm really lucky to have a wife that like just respects that I have something that and it's great that now it's like gotten to a level that I get to feature for just for labs, open for people where like they're, this isn't a lot of money. It's like, trust me, it's not a lot of money, but it's, my wife respects somebody working that hard. And, she immediately was like, is this, you think is a part of the process? So like, it's basically trying to help me say what I need to say to myself. Which is like, yeah, I'm sure they're going to be like this. And like, she'll just ask a small question and I'll just kind of give her all the reasons that it is a part of the process. And after you kind of explain it to somebody, you want to understand for yourself as well.
It's interesting though, it's very important to ask the right question in order to say the exact words that you want to say someone.
Oh, yeah.
And that is a very good skill to have. And
oh yeah, as a new dad, it's people won't ever forgive you for giving them the answer. No, but people won't forgive you for being right. Yeah,
people won't forgive you for being
right. So if you're actually in a disagreement with somebody, and you're right, they're wrong, there's a higher chance of them coming out with a negative impression of the conversation, depending on how you communicated your right. And it's like that, even if my wife knows the answer. But her helping me come to the answer that she wanted to give me is the whole thing I think about being a parent. My parents didn't understand it, right? And it's like, there's a Judo flying.
It's okay, we have AC parents.
AC parents, man. We got to have a couple of concussions from that. But yeah, that was one of the good things. I got married kind of old in life, like after the age of 30 and everything. Mm-hmm. And like, you have a lot more maturity with your spouse, and your spouse has a lot more maturity with you. So like, yeah, no, it's, I'm really fortunate where, if it's not her, then I'll like call one of my best friends who does stand up, people that are more experienced than me. And they always, they're a little bit more blunt, but like comedians are blunt, and they're like, we're part of the same, we're the same person, all comedians, at a very core level. So we allow each other to give us very direct advice. Or, yeah, my best friend, like I did a show, I was like, how was it? And he was like, C+ knowledge. And that's something my wife would never say, but like, that's what you like about comedians, is that they are pretty honest.
But I do believe sometimes, as you mentioned, your friend, it might be that she know that as an individual, you might are able to do a way better.
Right.
So they are like, okay, it's a native, but still I'm going to give you C+.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They also like they've seen you a lot to know what an A+ for you looks like, compared to like a coworker might come to work and be like, that was really funny. Yeah. But like somebody who's seen you 4 times is like, will know that that's like a B- actually. So it's, some people just consider doing stand-up a creed. They're like, wow, that was amazing, right? They don't have standards like some people do. So it's just like, you want to ask people with the highest standard, and yeah, you'll get a C+ pretty much every time. So.
We just talked about regarding the vibes which do travel, right? If you're happy, people do sense that. And their mood also, no matter in which situation they are, they also feel that vibe. Mm-hmm. Did you ever experience that first time?
That they have a like
that. Okay. Just for the sake of example, this happened with me. Let me share that story with them. I don't want to be naive. Okay, there's nothing bad I'm going to say about anyone. Okay. But yeah, this happened with me at my workplace, and nothing bad. Okay, again.
The more you keep saying nothing bad, I feel like it's something bad. But no, continue.
No, it's not bad. The only thing I'm saying, because I don't have the bad intentions.
Don't have that.
So this happened. I do experience that. Let's say I wake up, right? I used to do the night shifts, right? So I wake up, I'm fresh out of the bath, going for the work. I'm in a chill mode. Okay. As long as I go to my workplace and I sit at my desk, then I feel like I have this little swing in my mood. And from this level, my mood just simply collapsed to like this.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Did you ever experience that?
No, not really.
No. Because after that, when I have this weird habit of myself, if something happened, I try to analyze that particular situation and try to go on a root cause. What was the root cause for that situation?
Okay.
And then I noticed that.
Yeah.
Then I even don't remember in which book it was. I was reading a book, so which states that people do carry their vibes in a form of positive and negative emotions, or vibe, we can say. And they emit those vibes. And let's say if somebody's sitting here and they're in a whatever situation they are, and they are so deep in that situation, thinking again and again and again, they eventually leave the trace mark into that chair.
Right.
And the next person came to that chair, he basically absorbed that.
Right. Gotcha.
So in that context.
Yeah. And okay, so do you mean in the sense of like somebody else went up and I'm going up after them, or just in stand-up in general?
In general, in life.
So this is the key thing I learned, and I took a seminar to learn this, is that you're right. There are vibes and energies, and like, no exaggeration, you eat different foods and your brain's doing different things in terms of happiness or feeling drowsy or sad. So what I do before every time I do stand-up, or even every time I go play in sports, you have certain things you do. People call them superstitions or rituals. They're not. You're putting your body and your mind in a state of doing something that you do at a high level, and you're doing the similar things before that every time. Like when you see Steph Curry warm up, he's warming up the same way for every basketball game because he wants to have the same result every time. And that's the first start of getting momentum. So for me, what I do is I listen to the first comedy album I ever listened to, called Strategic Grill. I got downloaded on Napster by Mitch Hedberg. I listened to a few minutes of that. I listened to a few minutes of like a conversational podcast that I listened to. I don't even like really hear it. I just put it on. And the pacing of these two things are similar to and comfortable. They're very comfortable. The comedian and the podcast with two people speaking to each other. And then I listen to music that is upbeat. And I listen to the same music. I have a folder. It's the same, 8 to 20 songs. And I do that every time before going to a show. And I feel about the same by the time I get there, because it takes me 30 minutes at least to get down to Toronto, if not an hour. Even when I was living in Toronto, it would take me 20 minutes to bicycle ride or take the train. And that putting my brain in a place of familiarity. Oh, and the last thing I do before going up is listen to a set that went really well. The most recent set that went really well. I literally have a folder on my iPhone cloud that is, it's called a listen folder, and is literally the most recent sets that have gone really well. So that way, the thing is, you're only doing 7 to 10 minute sets. You can't spend the first minute remembering how you do this. So like, if you can do these things, even if you were to, let's say, go play basketball, like what you want to do, it's the same thing I do before a show, is that I sit down, I close my eyes, I put my hands on my palms, and I think of a time that I was doing something, and I was doing it really well. Whether it's public speaking or sports, shooting a basketball, hitting a tennis ball, I think about that moment in slow motion, in black and white, without any sound. And I think about it like just being first person. Like think about tossing the ball, wind up, cranking the wrist, jump, stroke. I think about that. And then as I hit it, it makes a sound. And now I do it backwards instead of black and white in color. I do it backwards. There's still like not full vibrancy of color. And I do that at the end. And I do this 3 times, and it takes like a couple of minutes. And then I open my eyes and I feel different. So like listening to 2 people that you've heard speak in a comfortable way, listening to a stand-up album of somebody you respect, listening to yourself, and then doing, right before you go onto that stage, doing this exercise, and then lifting your fists up, like lifting your fists and lifting them up. That's what I do. I would say before like 99%. Say a small prayer. Like this is the stuff I do before most things. If I do that, I feel like I have a more consistent performance, and whatever the vibe I have. Sometimes like you get off of work at 5, you're there at 7, horrible drive, work with whatever with work.
Exhausted.
Yeah. And it's like, what I have to eat a banana or something that's fruit related, or a date even, that's fine. And then do those things. And then by the time I get there, I feel, I don't feel like it was a Friday or whatever day it was. I feel like I just, it's the same thing for like when I used to play tennis, you got to stretch a lot. It's not for your body. It is for your body, but that's how you get your mind ready to know that you're about to do something.
Kind of a warm up.
Yeah. And that's the great thing about getting into stand-up late in life. Most people are very young when they get into this, which is a positive, because they have a lot more stamina. But I already knew how to get good at tennis. I already knew how to get good at Jiu Jitsu. And I realized some of those things apply to this as well. And that really helped me get good at comedy faster.
Talking about Jiu Jitsu, tell me something about Jiu Jitsu, because what I heard about Jiu Jitsu is a combination of physical as well as the mental awareness, because you cannot be active, let's say, just for the sake of example.
Mm-hmm.
There are few games in which if you're physically fit or physically performing well, you will be good. But in Jiu Jitsu, your mind and your body has to be sharp.
Yeah, there'll be people your size and smaller than you that will totally murder you. And by murder you, I mean they could kill you if they just hold on a choke longer. That like you tap and they're just like, no, I just want to. They can totally kill you, and you wouldn't have any way of stopping them. And that's what I love about Jiu Jitsu was that I got into it. My parents were working multiple jobs; they were out of the house, and me and my brother saw some UFC and saw some YouTube videos on Jiu Jitsu. And they're like, oh, let's try to do this choke. You can apparently choke people with your legs, And then he did it to me. And then I was like, whoa, I couldn't breathe. All right, and he's like, okay, do it to me. And then I got choking him with my legs. And then we're like, all right, let's see another choke. And then you do this other choke. You're like, whoa, that was, and then it takes a while to like figure out how to do all these chokes. And then you start doing like free flow grappling where both of you just start off in like a wrestling position and see who can get. It's very sloppy. And like it's people complain that live under you. But it was, you get really into it, especially as like two young boys. Like he's 19, I'm like 24. And it's a fun, like who's gonna do the dishes? Let's wrestle for it, Like so what I love about Jiu Jitsu is it doesn't end until somebody taps out to like their wrists being bent too much. And I can bend everything in my body more than it should because people have bent it that way.
I just noticed that.
Yeah, no, it's on like that one as well. Everything. My ankle.
How did that go?
Yeah, it's fine. It's perfectly fine.
Okay.
But you start realizing how many ways you can choke somebody. And you can do it full blast. Like boxing, if you do it full blast, you're going to hurt other people. I've done it full blast. You can't do it too often because you get a concussion. But Jiu Jitsu, you can do it full blast. And as long as you tap on the other person, let's go, you can just go right back at it. Like, so it's just like if an actual fight happens, you know how to not hold back. Like you can go at the same pace in the gym with a friend or somebody with a complete stranger. And that's within the rules of what you do. You're not being rude. That's how you do the sport.
Yep.
And then something happened outside of a club, you make the wrong joke and whatever, you at least know what to do.
And if you're in States.
Dude, yeah. I mean, if they have a gun, then like you just lay down and die. But what I love about Jiu Jitsu is that it took away a lot of my anxiety of just knowing that I know how to handle myself in a physical situation against people of almost any size. Like you could be 6'4" and 230 and it's still like, it's not that I'm going to kill you, but I know exactly what to do that you understand that this is not a safe situation. And that really, because growing up in Houston, like you get picked on a lot just by the nature of, it doesn't matter if you're rich or you're just going to get picked on. So like I had this weird, sense of like, oh my God, what if something bad happened? But yeah, Jiu Jitsu just took all of that away, but also adds a lot of humility because like every day you roll and you're going to get tapped 2-3 times or somebody has a choke on you in a way that like you're vision starts going down into a small ball. And you're like, all right. So, yeah, I recommend it to everybody. Fantastic. It teaches you a lot about yourself because in these super uncomfortable situations where a big guy just has you down, they're trying to isolate an arm to like break it, and you're uncomfortable, and you can choose to like tap out quickly, or you could try to really figure out the situation and make this guy wonder, like, what does it take for this person to give up? And that's something I learned from tennis, was that like playing Texas heat, it's 104 degrees Fahrenheit. This is a persistence sport now. It's not even me out hitting you. It's like, who's going to crap up more because I know you're dehydrated and I'm dehydrated. And like, I can play a lot longer no matter how uncomfortable it is what I'm trying to show you. And we're going to crap up. At some point in a normal game, one of you will crap up, your leg is going to tense up, and because you're just going to get dehydrated. It's like, it's too hot. So just like, if you can apply that mentality to Jiu-Jitsu, there is something like that. Then you can apply that to stand-up, which is like, yeah, I'm going to do 8 shitty shows so I can do 3 okay shows so I can do 1 good show. And it's not going to make sense to anybody other than people who love to struggle. And that's something you can kind of carry through between all 3 of those.
It's interesting, as you mentioned, how you got your interest into the jiu-jitsu. For me, I used to play judo, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So how it started,
Yeah.
judo just being introduced to my senior school and high school. It was the same school.
Where is this?
It was back home. I'm from Punjab.
Nice.
I'm from Punjab. Within Punjab, my city is Ludhiana.
Okay.
And over there, I used to study in PVM school.
Okay.
And I believe I was in standard 6th or 7th, somewhere around. So that was the very first time judo was being introduced in our school. And they have like the big mats, the good mats, judo actual mats, and everything was there. So what happened before the prayers or before the school started?
Yeah.
We used to go early. We all friends, and it's like you must have watched in WWE how every wrestler is within the ring,
right,
and just throwing away anyone.
Yeah.
Right. So there was kind of that situation. So I do remember. So one of my buddy over there. So I was fighting someone.
Yeah.
So as soon as I was done with that person.
Yeah.
So I don't know where he come from. She picked me up from the back.
Yeah.
And the way he tried to throw me.
Yeah.
So he was trying to throw me on the side with like this thing, right?
Right.
From the back. So now basically what I did, with my leg, I used to lock his leg.
Right.
So basically if I'm going down, he's also going down.
Nice.
So technically what happened, as long as both are going down, so basically his shoulder, just lean on this particular ball, like collar ball.
Oh my God.
It was broken.
Oh man.
So it was that one particular moment for me. So after that, as soon as I was recovered as that, I was like, okay, come back again.
Oh my God, man.
So from that day, I do remember I used to practice with like open weight guys. Open weight means anyone above, I was approximately like 45 kgs at that time.
I don't even know what that is in pounds. But.
Yeah, in pounds, approximately like 75 to 80.
I got you.
Between that range.
Okay.
And I used to fight with like, during the practice, I used to fight with the open weight who is like more than 80 plus kgs.
Right.
So 80 plus kgs is approximately like 150 pounds to 160 pounds, something like that. So I used to practice with those people. Even though I do remember I used to practice with one of the senior, and I forgot the name of that guy. So he was like 6 feet, and in front of me, I was like a little kid. I used to practice with him.
So funny. That's a great experience, though, right?
Yeah. So that was my story, how I got started into judo, and
you had a gi, it's called a gi, right? The thing they wear,
the kimono, and the rope.
I got you. Yeah, they used to make us wear we called it a gi in jiu-jitsu, and I remember one of the judo guys. We had judo classes, which I never went to, and he called me. He's like, "Can I practice? I have a tournament." He's a very good guy. And he put me in a gi, and then even though I do jiu-jitsu and I've seen them do it in a gi, this guy just tossed me around.
Yeah.
And I realized what it was. When you have a tournament coming up, you don't want to hurt yourself with somebody with experience. So you get somebody like me and just literally, it's a very if you don't know what you're doing, judo people are very hard to deal with because you don't even understand the sense of balance of what is coming.
Even though in the judo, if you have to fall out on the mat, if somebody's throwing you on the mat, there's a proper technique.
Oh, yeah.
That was the very first thing I learned
Right.
after I was recovered from my shoulders.
Right. Yeah.
That was the very first thing. I was like, okay, as long as I'm landing right, I won't mind.
Fun, great sport though. Really good at building grip strength.
Yeah. And along with that, I do remember. So let me share that trick. So it was my first tournament. So I used to play this trick with everybody. So basically, as long as the referee just start the fight.
Yeah.
So as a goodwill gesture, we just tap each other's hands, right?
Right.
So this happened. So I was like, okay, we tap the hand.
Right.
And I just did again. So I don't know what is going on in his mind.
Yeah.
And he tried to tap my hand again.
Yeah.
So I just, boom, game over.
That's so funny. Well, once somebody sees you do that once, they're like, I'll go get it with you down.
So by the time we did, I just logged him. I was like, boom.
You know what they do in Jiu Jitsu to cheat? They take lotion, like all the baby lotion, and they rub it all over themselves. And they just sit there and they dry. So like at first you're not slippery, but once you start sweating,
then you start.
It's like a seal. You're like wrestling with that little. It's very. You can tell when somebody's done it, and it's very annoying because. And some people are on steroids. Like at my gym, which is a very competitive gym, some people were on steroids. Like what I used to do was cut weight. So right now I weigh 150 pounds. So what I would do is cut 30 pounds. The month of the tournament, I would lose 30 pounds and then fight at 125. And that way I was way bigger than everybody else. That's not exactly cheating. That's within the rules.
Yeah.
But like
as long as you maintain your weight.
Yeah, people will do what they need to do, kind of like, get an edge. And yeah, that's what I used to do, was a lot of starving.
Talking about the weights, it was very tricky for me to maintain the 45 kgs range.
I can imagine.
So I do remember, so there's a plus minus 2, right?
Okay.
So if you are 45, as long as you're 47, you are in the range of 45. For me, it's 47.5. So I have to fight 50 kgs down.
You got to shave your hair then. You got to just... And people used to go in the bathroom and just try to like pee and poop and spit. And then you're like so tired for the rest of the tournament, losing a half a pound of like...
What?
Yeah. But that's... If I had to do it again, I would have done a higher weight class. But some places have such big weight classes that you don't want to be at like your situation. You don't want to be the smallest guy in a bigger weight class. But
yeah,
it builds character.
Yeah, so... very first thing which we do in the tournament, we have to take care of the weights, right?
Right.
So the judges over there, they measure our weight, and after that, they create their list and stuff like that. So we are being instructed that you don't have to eat anything since morning till no matter what time your weight is being done.
Oh man!
So we have to be at this stomach.
Wow!
So that our weight, we cannot go overweight. Otherwise, you are in the whole different age group now.
Yeah.
In the weight group now.
Yeah.
And then it might be difficult for you to fight.
That's so funny. They didn't do that part. We would just be, and then we would just eat just chicken wings as soon as we weigh in. I went to a tournament where they had a similar rule, but you can stand on the scale with the food you're going to be eating. And as long as you stand on the scale with the food and you're still under the threshold, then you can eat that food because it's not going to make you go over. So that was funny because you'd be standing there with like a banana and a protein shake. You're like, I'll put the protein shake back. You're like, oh, you're a weighing scale yourself. You're like, so yeah. Fun.
Anyhow, I have 2 last questions for you. And these are very common questions which I mostly ask myself. And I'm trying to make a habit to ask everybody.
Sure.
Number 1, if you have to give advice to younger self of yourself, so that younger individual will go and achieve success in his life at a very fast pace.
I would say number 1 is think a lot less of what other people think or will think or may think, and think a lot less about what you might even think. And it's the way I make it make sense is that in life, the whole goal is to get as many experiences so you can learn from them. That's really, you have to be kind to people. There's a lot, but like you have to gain as many experiences and you have to be ready to fail. And it's okay to fail and fail often. So you understand that that's the way of life. And to do that, you have to stop thinking about, because especially if you're immigrant and you're brown, what was your grade? How'd you do at that? Everything is like stack ranked in a way where it's competitive, and there is failure, and failure is nothing worse than failure. You know, are you A or a B? What are you doing getting a C, D for duffer, F, anything could happen. But that's not actually life, especially living in a first world country. It's more about experiences, how you can apply them. So it's just like embrace failure and just understand that it's just like a bad joke. It's just the way of you doing stand-up, which is a hard thing. Failure is a hard part of a beautiful process. And like, I don't think I could have told myself this, but I wish somebody would have helped me get to that realization. It's an easy thing to say and hear. It's a hard realization to come to, is that everything good, every single thing that's good that's happened to my life has come out of me trying something 3 times and not going right the first 2. Everything good, whether it's tennis or jiu-jitsu or stand-up or whatever, like work, whatever. Like, it took me a few tries to get really good at something, and that's apparently just who I am. But when I get good at it, if I'm doing stand-up, it's at a level there, like on the left, it's at a level that it's definitely good. It's like headliner level. If it's jiu-jitsu, it's at a level where I was almost qualifying for the Pan American Games. If it was tennis, a semi-pro. But I sucked at all of those things for a long time. Like, a year to 2 years of doing, none of that came super easy. All of that was like, I had to believe in myself more than what the output actually was. Because I could see that I could get better, and I was getting better, but it just definitely wasn't an A+ right off the bat, where I didn't make varsity tennis. Jiu-jitsu, the first time I did it at a big tournament, was choked unconscious within 30 seconds. I'm pretty sure 35 maybe. First time I did stand-up, like, just talked in one long sentence, right? All of those things I take pride in now, and I'm better than like anybody average practicing those things. So like, it's tough to get over your upbringing, but like at some point you're a grown up, and like, you're going to have to tell yourself, no one's got to come and explain this stuff to you, that you got to fail, and you got to take a chance, no matter how big or small. So yeah, fail. That's what I would tell. Like, it's okay to fail. I'm a failure. That's why I do good at things. I failed way more, but like, if you fail long enough, you're going to be very successful. That's the only way to be very successful.
If you're doing something in life, no matter what you're doing, even though you are doing anything, right? So it does not matter. So either in your life, you will be successful, or there is no failure. There is always a lesson learned, right? So you will definitely learn something, even though for that learning, you have to calm yourself, sit down, and go back in that particular period so that you can think, okay, what are the other possibilities or the outcomes if you try to do things in a different way?
100%.
So that is what I do strongly believe. So there is no failure. There's always a lesson learned, as you explained,
100%.
that you sitting here and whatever you're doing in your life is at a very successful rate, is because of the failure in your life. Even though from the example of jiu-jitsu, as you've given me the very first time, down in between 35 to 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a lesson learned.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
big time.
Interesting.
Yeah, man.
Second question, that if you have 24 hours of life,
sure,
what you will do in that 24?
Cocaine. No, I've never done cocaine. But I mean, maybe you should. Maybe you should do cocaine, ride a bull, like do the things you've never done before. I would just hang out with my wife and my parents and stuff. That's probably not the answer what you were looking for. But yeah, man, I'm
not looking for any answers.
Oh, I got
whatever.
Yeah, I love nature. I love spending time with my family. I like food. If I can just if something was to happen and we're like, hey, so tomorrow the moon is just gonna crash into Earth, I'm not gonna even try to save myself, or just let's see where the moon's gonna hit. Let's find a spot right under that. I want it to hit me in the face. I don't want to try to live after the moon's hit the Earth, and spend time with the family, and think about the good old times. Yeah, I'm a big on that, is talking and reminiscing and remembering the best times, and making more of it, man. So like, yeah, if you only have 24 hours, think about the past, the fun ones. Um, our brain is always just thinking about the next thing you have to get. I got to do this. I got to post that. I got to edit this. I got to make a resume. and that's all true as well. But it's just like that balance is key. So otherwise, just become a friggin' dying person. It's not, yeah, it's like, it's true. Like you're just dying, and like,
It's very deep.
sorry, man. I wish I had a joke for you about athleting or
it's all
something.
good because these two questions, I never expect any answer to these questions.
Right.
Even if at this moment you said, I want to do cocaine, it's completely fine. I'm not going to judge you. It's
Still on the
completely
table. It might be, I don't know. I can probably do all, like hang out with my parents and do cocaine.
fine. At the same time, okay.
Yeah. I was like, I'll be back, Mom. I have some talcum powder to get to. But no, I appreciate you asking the question.
All right, Syed brother. Thank you very much for coming to the Avilash podcast.
No, this is
And
fantastic.
I do appreciate that. There was a lot to learn from you. And as I mentioned in the very beginning, you are one of my true motivation in the real life example.
Yeah.
Because most of the time I do see people on the YouTube, on the TVs, right? I never met someone who is actively following their passion, what they want to do, along with their day-to-day life.
Man.
So that was very inspiring for me.
I was inspired by other people who did something similar. So I'm glad. I hope through the podcast, people will see you and be like, you know what? Look at this guy. He has his own podcast talking to a stupid comedian. Maybe they do something that they wanted to do, whether it's big or small. So
Thank you very much. Thank you very
Awesome.
much. Sometimes I'm very disappointed with the core human behavior. Just for an example, what happened after 9/11? It was beyond the imagination. That how your neighbor who knows you for almost all his life suddenly became a stranger. I hope you had learned a lot from Syed's life experiences, his stories, as well as from his sense of humor. For such an amazing episode, stay tuned and follow us at the Avilash Podcast, where the experience flows.